right now. Today is the day that you choose to change the rest of your life. It is time to turn your setback into the greatest comeback story ever told, and nobody is more capable than you. This is the Ranting Weight Watcher podcast, the future #1 weight loss podcast in the world. I am your host, Donato Russo. I hope you enjoy the show today. If this is your first time here and you enjoy the show, please subscribe and spread the word of the Ranting Weight Watcher podcast wherever you are and to whomever will listen. If you'd like to connect on social media or wherever else, check out my Linktree page, Linktree/the Ranting Weight Watcher. Let's connect today. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Whenever you may be listening, thanks for making me part of your day. This is the Ranting Weight Watcher, episode 220, and I am Donato Russo. So I have a quick announcement. I'm not sure if you guys see my walk videos if you follow me on social media, but if you don't, then this announcement is for all of you. Last week was the very first week that the podcast was a video podcast. And I had a bunch of messages that came in. How do I see the video podcast? Right now, I only know of 2 ways you can see the podcast as a video podcast. Spotify and YouTube are the only 2 applications I know of right now that you can see the video of the podcast. If you are listening on any other platform and you could see the video, please send an email to the show and let me know what application you're using so I can add it to the list. I'd love to make a list of all the applications that the video version of the podcast is available on. For sure right now, I know that Apple Podcasts, Pandora, Amazon Music are all audio only. So if you're using another applications besides one of those and you could see the video, please email the show. Now, if you're looking to switch between one of them, there is a difference between Spotify and YouTube. YouTube is going to be video only. You're not going to have an option. Where Spotify is audio or video, your choice. So why would that be significant? If you intend to see the video no matter what, not a big deal. Go to YouTube, right? But let's say you're going for a walk and you're going to put the phone in your pocket anyway. Having me on YouTube just makes sure the screen stays lit the entire walk, and it will kill your battery faster. Where Spotify, you can just push the power button on the side of your phone, the screen will go to sleep, but the audio will continue to play. Seamlessly transitions from video to audio without issues. If you get back from your walk and the podcast is still going, you could turn the screen back on and it will switch back to video instantly without issue. So the choice is yours, really. If you want to have the option, audio or video, you want Spotify. If you're going to watch it no matter what, then YouTube is fine too. Either way, it's all up to you. And please, if you're using something else that I haven't mentioned and you're able to see the video, please email the show and let me know so that I can add it to the list. So when people ask me, what apps can I use to see the video, I'll know. Well, that's enough wasting time. Let's get into this! Journey updates. All right, work stats for the week of February 9th through February 15th. A total step count of 90,126 steps. That's an average steps per day of 12,875 steps. Total number miles walked, 38.5 miles. Average miles per day, 5.5. I have still not lifted any weights, still dealing with some joint pain in my right leg, in my knee. So when I start that, I will have some weightlifting stats too. But for all of this work, here's where I stand. Current weight, 226.2. That is a 1.2 pound gain. Total pounds remaining to my 200 pound goal is 30.6 pounds. It just goes to show you what I have been trying to point out to you guys for years. When you do the work, it doesn't show up when you expect it to. It shows up when it shows up. The important thing is for you to be consistent with the work, and the results will come. So today, I want to speak to you a little about quantity versus quality. Every person who starts this journey, whether Weight Watchers, whatever it is, a lot of the mentality for beginners and even some veterans is, how do I eat the most amount of food for the least amount of points? This is me included. My mentality when I first started this journey was, as long as I wasn't hungry, I would not eat anything I shouldn't eat. So that was my ideology here. As long as I was hungry, as long as I wasn't hungry, I would not eat things I shouldn't eat, things that would be detrimental to my journey. I created a plan like this, and I was eating probably every 2 hours throughout the whole day. And I was eating foods extremely low on points, because I figure the more low point food I could eat, the less points I use. That means the more food I could eat, right? Everybody has this mentality when they first start out. There's a flaw in this mentality, though. I mean, the mentality works. I'm not going to mess around and tell you it didn't work. I lost a lot of my weight like this. Number one, there's a line at some point where it becomes time for you to evolve. But we're going to get to that in a minute. But there is a flaw in this. There's a flaw in that idea of eating the most amount of food for the least amount of points. And that flaw is, how many points are you left with at the end of the day? Right? At some point, I was left with so many points at the end of the day, it became like, oh, today was a good day. I'm going to have a little something. I'm going to use some of these points I didn't use and have something. So whether that was a dessert or whatever the case may be. But it started off little things here and there. And then it became consistent. You see, every dive into something, it's like a slippery slope. What seems innocent at the moment eventually becomes the mudslide of problems, right? The key to all of it is having to recognize, hey, I had some good intentions here. I was doing well. I compromised. And now here I am. And not only recognizing it, doing something about it and fixing it, bringing it back to center, right? I've mentioned this before. Throughout the entire journey, so I'm here 6 years this year, January 12th, 2025 was my 6-year anniversary. And throughout time, over that 6-year time period, there have been pivotal moments that I clearly have a choice to make in that moment. The first pivotal moment happened on day 1. I walked in with one idea in mind. I want to lose 200 pounds and then reevaluate my life. That was the idea. And so with that came a drastic change in how I eat. I started to look at, let's take a look at all of the foods that Weight Watchers would consider as a lower point item or a 0 point item. And let's taste a lot of them. Let's see what I like. It's no use choosing something because it's low on points if I don't like it, right? So that's how the choices were made. I started building a library of low point or no point food items that I could literally build the foundation of my journey on. Because my mentality was, if I never felt hunger, I would never look for the things that are detrimental. The things that have been causing me to go in circles nearly my entire life. Because that's the big thing. If you were trying to quit alcohol today, it would be cold turkey. You wouldn't attempt to live with alcohol and quit alcohol at the same time. But food addiction has the world essentially deluded into thinking you can live with the items that you are addicted to because it's food and it's normal to eat. So my turn away from the things that triggered me in the beginning caused me to lose 50 pounds by August of the same year. So from July 2019 to August 2019, 50-pound charm was handed to me. I promise you, I've said this before, but I'm saying it again today. I promise you, on that day, when my coach Terry in the studio handed me that charm, I heard an audible voice. That voice sounded just like my own. Many of you would call that your conscience. I tend to believe it was a divine voice. But that voice said one simple thing to me. You got the 50-pound charm without doing any exercise. You will not lose another 50 without introducing it. I took those words as law on that morning. I had zero doubt that the words I heard were correct. Zero doubt. I knew another 50 pounds would not be lost without the introduction of exercise. I had not exercised at all up to that point, and going and losing 50 pounds just by changing what I eat and how much I eat of it, obviously. So a plan was put in place to slowly, over time, introduce movement into my life. At 350 some odd pounds at that time, I couldn't move very far. Okay, I had plenty of knee issues then. I had a lot of joint issues. Let's just say it like that. I had spent the majority of my life morbidly obese. There was no way I didn't have joint problems. So I said to myself, I could walk in the parking lot. I'm not going to be far from the house. I'll be very close. And the goal would be 15 minutes. I woke up at 4 o'clock in the morning. My first day, I attempted to walk. 15 minutes went by in a snap, and I quickly realized it had to be more than 15 minutes. I went for 20. I got the 20. I went inside. So from this point on, it was going to be 3 times a week, 20-minute walk, circling the parking lot for the next 8 weeks. I would make no changes to this until the 8 weeks were up. 8 weeks flies by in a flash. I succeed at creating the consistent effort, 20 minutes, 3 days a week. That 20 minutes after the 8-week mark became 30 minutes. 30 minutes, 3 times a week for the next 8 weeks. And again, 8 weeks just flew by. And that 30 became 45. 45 minutes for another 8 weeks. At the end of that set of 8 weeks, though, I made a different decision. Rather than go to 1 hour, I added a 4th day. Another 8 weeks. Every single time I made a change, it was with a promise of doing that without making any changes, regardless of how I felt, 8 weeks. And I allowed myself the leeway that it didn't matter which days of the week it was, so long as I met the requirement. It didn't have to be Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday to make 4 days. It could be Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and I made the 4 days. As long as I made the 4 days for 45 minutes, this is how I succeeded at introducing movement into my life. That 45 minutes turned into 60 minutes. That 4 days turned into 5 days. And I no longer measure minutes anymore. And I no longer walk in the parking lot because it got so boring circling my own parking lot, you go out of your mind. And now my time is measured in miles, not in minutes. But it all started with one decision: to do 20 minutes, 3 days a week for the next 8 weeks. The commitment for the elapsed amount of time. And then at the end of that elapsed amount of time, to maintain what you did and add more. Is that simple? That simple. I kept this going for quite some time at that point. I kept making progress, kept making moves. I got the 100-pound charm. I celebrated that. Nothing changed after the 100-pound charm. I kept it going. Part of gaining the 100-pound charm was in the process of all the 8-week increments. So I tell you I didn't change anything, but in reality, I was changing things based on the plan, right? Based on the plan I had put in place many, many, many weeks ago. Those are the changes I was still working toward. My next pivotal moment did not happen until after getting the 150-pound charm. I didn't realize it until a year after, or 10 months, I should say. 10 months after getting the 150-pound charm, I noticed that I had been dancing up and down for the same 5 pounds for quite a while. So it caused me to look at a bigger portion of the results. When you are always in the here and now, it just looks like it's going up and down, right? But when you take steps backward and you see more of the journey, it starts to look like a straight line. And going up and down 5 pounds is basically maintenance. When you stretch it out over a year, over 2 years, over the entirety of the journey, it looks like a straight line. And so 10 months had gone by of me dancing up and down 5 pounds, making zero progress. I said to myself, something's got to change here. I'm just maintaining. Something's different. I missed the pivotal moment for 10 months, in other words. It was that day that I realized that I said to myself, it's about time to open a book and learn something I don't already know about nutrition. And that was the day that I opened a book that changed everything about how I eat. I've mentioned the name of the book. I've even had the author on my show. The episode is somewhere in the 170 mark. Somewhere between 170 and 179 is the episode with the author, Christine Hronik. And her book is Unlock Your Macro Type. I read a book that finally made me understand what macros were and what was the point of tracking them. It was in this moment, after finishing this book, that my quest for balance came. I started this by creating a baseline. That baseline was for 1 week, I would track everything as it was in the macro tracking app I was using at the time, because at that time, Weight Watchers didn't have macros available. So I was using another app to do it. I would eat exactly how I'd been eating. I've mentioned this on the podcast before, but I promise you this is all going to come to a point. If you would have asked me before reading that book, how do you eat, man? I would have said to you, high protein, low carb. That's what I would have said. That baseline week that I decided to create so I would know where I was the most eye-opening week of my entire journey. I was nowhere near what I said I was. There's something different about counting macros and paying attention to what you're eating, what makes up what you're eating, I should say. And that difference primarily is you start to realize how many things you eat have carbs in them. How many things you eat you don't even see as carbs, but there's carbs in them. At the end of that baseline week, I was eating 3 times as many carbs as I was protein, if not more. My average was 600 grams per day of carbohydrates. These carbohydrates came from fruit, came from rice, came from bread, came from any kind of starchy vegetables you could think of, really. Potato, you know all of them, right? But all of those things. And when you go to weigh a fruit, it's a different experience. You're not just tracking a medium apple anymore. You're putting an apple on a scale and you're realizing, according to what the book said, I should be eating this many grams of protein, this many grams of carbohydrate, and this many grams of fat. It gives you percentages, right? And when you see that you're eating 3 times as many carbohydrates because you're sticking an apple on a scale, and the weight of that apple is a third of the carbohydrates you should eat in a day. A third. And then when you add a banana on top of that, a lot of my sources to keep myself full all came from fruit. But just the 3 fruits I would eat in the morning: apple, pear, banana. I was upwards of 150 grams of carbohydrates already, and I didn't even go through the rest of the day yet. And I was 170 was the limit at the time. 175, something like that. I knew that I couldn't go from 600 gram intake to 175. So even this was methodically done over time, cutting a little at a time to go from 600 plus to 175. Off the top of my head, the amount of time, I don't know. All I know was I made decisions of I was willing to cut, and I added things because I had, for whatever carbohydrates I had to get rid of, I had to increase protein. Because the 600 grams plus of carbohydrates, I was at 160 grams of protein, and I needed to be much higher. So there was a bit of a balancing act there. But I would never have known that had I not read the book. I'd still be eating all of the snacks, all of the wrapper-based things. The amount of hidden ingredients in all of those things is another story altogether. Forget about that for now. We're talking specifically about nutrients. Protein, fat, carbohydrates. 3 nutrients that make up almost every food you eat. The easy thing to get rid of in this moment was any snacks that came in a wrapper. Because the important thing to me was to hold on to the fruit at all costs. I enjoyed my fruit so much that I was not willing to let it go. I literally let go of all of the bread I ate, all of the rice I ate, corn, potatoes, all of those things, all of the wrapper-based snacks, all of those was without hesitation. And believe it or not, doing all of that, I was just there. Just there. A little bit over where I needed to be with the carbohydrates. So then it became, let's pick smaller apples. Let's pick smaller bananas. And that kind of made the difference. I made the changes in that pivotal moment. I seriously, if you would have asked me at that time, I seriously believed, because I felt so good about what I was doing, I seriously believed I would never change how I ate again. My protein was up, my fat intake was up, my carbohydrates were down, and I felt great. I would have told you, I would have told anyone, I'm never changing this way of eating ever again. And then there was one more pivotal moment that I did not see coming whatsoever. That was in the form of a diagnosis. I was diagnosed with an autoimmune condition. It's called bullous pemphigoid. This is a skin condition. And to make you understand, essentially, my immune system was rejecting the top layer of my skin as a foreign entity. And I could literally feel the skin, the top layer of skin, separate from my body, and something as simple as towel drying coming out of the shower, I would wipe skin off my arm, my legs, whatever it was. I had open wounds everywhere. For a long time, I went to 3 different dermatologists, and it took quite some time to have an official diagnosis. And meantime, they were pumping me with steroids. It wasn't helping. Steroid cream wasn't helping. Nothing was helping. They came to the point, they finally gave me my diagnosis, and the treatment plan for that diagnosis was to put me on immunosuppressant drugs. They could not cure my condition. They could only manage it. I would deal with taking medication for the rest of my life. If any one of you knows me, this answer was unacceptable. I was not going to pop pills for the rest of my life only to put a condition to sleep. They wanted me to shut down my immune system so that a disease that wasn't going away anyway could be managed. And I would have no defense against any other ailment on this planet. That was their treatment plan. This was not acceptable to me. There had to be a better way. I did a lot of research from that time. I used their methods to make me comfortable for as long as I could find out a real solution. I was using their creams. I was taking their steroids, but I wasn't taking immunosuppressant drugs. This was where I drew the line. I had kind of happened by accident. I found someone with a skin condition different than mine, autoimmune condition, and she turned to a carnivore-based lifestyle, and her skin was completely clear. She's not on medication. She has an autoimmune condition. It's different than mine, but it has to do with her skin as well. I said to myself, what do I have to lose? I had made so many changes by that time throughout my entire 5 years at that point, I think it was. 4 or 5 years, maybe 4.5. It was somewhere between the 4-year anniversary and the 5th-year anniversary that I received this diagnosis. I had given up so many things. What was another thing? In the name of health, what did I desire more? Did I desire the carbohydrates I was eating, or did I desire my health? That's the choice I was making, because it was either continue eating the way I was eating, have the condition, take the medication, or change everything and have the chance to not be on the medication. There is not a single medication available to you that has been tested for years and years and years. They prescribe them for years and years and years, but they have never been tested for that long. And they act like because something is safe over a short period of time, it should be safe indefinitely. Let's just say most of you have heard this story before, and I'm taking a really long time to tell it, to paint a picture here. But I made the choices necessary to start transitioning my life to a carnivore-based lifestyle. I never actually made it to 0 carbs. I spend most days at a carb level of under 20 grams. So somewhere between 5 and 19, that's where I spend most days at the carbohydrate level. Saturday and Sunday, I go a little higher. But during the week, the majority of the week, I'm somewhere between 5 grams and 20 grams of carbohydrates. Again, no medication except to stop the itching with the steroids. A few weeks had gone by eating this way. The wounds on my leg healed up. The wounds on my arms healed up. And the wounds in my scalp healed up. I found a way to manage an autoimmune condition without medication. And it took me a severe nutritional change to do that. Now, if you look at my entire journey as a whole, 6 years of information. And in that 6 years, you can clearly see a trend. A trend from quantity to quality. There was one thing I learned in all of these transitions. Number one, I was never nearly as hungry the way I eat now as I was in the beginning. When I compare the two, I told you that I ate the way I ate to make sure I wasn't hungry. And yet I was eating every 2 hours. The truth is, if I ate then the way I'm eating now, I only eat 3 times a day now. And sometimes, depending on the amounts, the weights of certain food, there's like 12 hours in between meals. And it's only 2 times a day. And this is how I learned the difference between quantity and quality. I mean, look, I often think, what if this diagnosis had come to me 2 years earlier? Like before reading the book. Would I have been able to make all of those changes in the name of the diagnosis? I can honestly tell you I would not have made those changes. I honestly believe with all of my heart I would have taken the medication just like I was told. I had not learned enough lessons about eating quality foods. At that point, I was still eating highly processed foods that were designed to sit on a shelf for 20, 30 years. They have expiration dates that's only for legal purposes. For all we know, those expiration dates don't get stamped on the product until they ship. How do we know? We're not walking into some food factory somewhere and opening a random box of Oreo cookies and looking for an expiration date. We just go to the grocery store and we buy them, and there's already an expiration date. But how do you know when the expiration date got put on there? You don't. That's the truth of it. You don't know. The timeline of my journey was that delicate. That delicate. Events happened just a little bit sooner. The outcome would be completely different. The goal of this podcast going forward is to get you guys to begin a transition. A transition from eating quantity to eating quality. Now more than ever is your biggest chance to make that move. The recent changes of WW enable you to do this with the introduction of macros and everything else. We will start talking about a plan to make this transition next week. That's going to be the focus from here on out. Getting you guys to take the same evolutionary journey I took. So many people on the journey apply the same rules that they have on day 1 to day 1001. There is zero evolution. They think whatever they learned in kindergarten applies in college. They think it should be the same level of difficulty from day 1 all the way through. I could tell you that's not, there couldn't be anything further from the truth. As you go down, the hardness level goes up. The weight loss goes down, the scale goes down, the hardness goes up. It only gets harder. And if you never evolve, you become stagnant. And then you start going in circles. And you get frustrated. You eat however you want. You go in a circle over and over again. Get frustrated. Eat whatever you want. get depressed, make some changes, get frustrated, eat whatever you want. If no evolution is made, that's where you stay. That's where you stay. I'm going to paint the picture of an evolutionary journey from here on out. However long it takes, it's up to you to make the changes. You know, I spend countless hours every week sitting at this microphone, sitting at this computer, writing notes, preparing what I'm going to say to you all the time. I spend countless hours on top of sitting in this exact same spot for a 40-hour work week. Here is where I sit to work 40 hours a week. Here is where I sit additionally to create this for you. And I sit here and spew the gospel of everything I could possibly remember that will help you evolve. I don't care what you know. I don't care who you know. I don't care what you think. And I don't care how you feel. I only care about one thing. I care about to see if you care enough about yourself to take the actions necessary to transform your life. This is what I care about. I care about your actions. I have a question for you. If someone could only see your actions and not hear your words, what would they tell me your priorities are? It's that simple. It's time for a change in priorities. I am no longer going to sit at this microphone and allow you to live under the delusion that evolution is not necessary. What you learned on day 1 no longer applies at day 3001. It is up to you to evolve. There are way too many books. There are way too many articles. There are way too many documentaries, podcasts, and all kinds of things about nutrition for you to completely ignore it because you pay for a program that says to do something this way. The guidelines of those things are fine, but it is up to you to take those guidelines and run with them. That's what the thing is. It doesn't just end with the rules of the journey. It doesn't just end there. There's so much more. And it's not just like the double line in the middle of the road. It's the dotted line. And it's up to you to switch lanes and keep going. But the choice is yours. No one can make you do this. I could lose my voice every week and it will not change your life. You are the hero in your story, not me. I'm the same guy I have been since day 1 of this podcast. If you haven't changed, it's by choice. Because what you are not changing, you are choosing. And expecting things to change without making any changes, it's crazy. That's more crazy than ever you think I sound. You expect things to change by doing them the exact same thing over and over again. And you know what this is causing, this mentality? Is that you think you failed in the process. Like, okay, well, if I just kept going and didn't quit, yeah, that's partially right. But at those moments where you want to quit, at those moments when you're the most frustrated, at those moments when everything is falling apart and all you want to do is figure out why, these are the moments of evolution. These are the moments of pivoting. You're missing the pivot. You're missing the chance to evolve. So what if this time you become to a pivotal moment, you actually make a change. You actually read a book. You actually find out something you don't already know. And what if that one thing you learn becomes the catalyst to launching your evolution? The choice is yours. I love each and every one of you. God bless you all.